Welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm Bryant Balcom, and from inside the Smith Center, he's publisher Andrew Jones. We are back for another edition of Three Things, this time following North Carolina's 97-73 win over NC State. Again, went to Tar Heels, never trailed, and improved to 16-11 overall and 9-6 in ACC play. But before we get started, AJ, I want to talk about the promo we have going on, a chance to receive a promo. We are looking to hit 40,000 followers on Twitter/X, reach 20,000 subscribers on YouTube, and we will pick a select few to receive a 2-year membership to THI. That's right, for free, 2 years of premium content that you can only get at TarHeelIllustrated.com.
And 20,000 on YouTube, right? Did you just mention YouTube? Okay. Because it went out and there was a bang over here. They're not putting away the arena, fortunately. So we won't complain about that. Some people don't like it when we complain about the sounds, but you kind of went out on that one. Yeah, 20,000 for YouTube, 40,000 for Twitter/X by the end of basketball. For the Twitter one, we're really pushing it to the end of March. We can give away free subscriptions. So if you love THR, you want a chance to check us out, go ahead and sign up, subscribe. Doesn't cost anything, and you could be randomly selected to get freebies. And you want to have those freebies because our premium stuff, you don't see it, you don't hear it and see it on these channels. You don't see it on the front page. We do have a lot of free stuff, but there's a lot more that we do, guys. We are inside the nitty gritty, and there's a lot of it that you get only as a premium subscriber.
Yeah, so come join us on YouTube, Twitter/X, whatever you want to call it. We're happy to have you.
Absolutely.
But going back to the game in UNC, runaway victory over NC State, a game I mentioned they never trailed. The second time in a row they haven't trailed. Didn't trail in the win over Syracuse on Saturday either. A game that had some interesting circumstances, might I add. A little 2 hours before game time, UNC announced that anyone could come to the game, ticket or no ticket, for free. So you knew that the fan atmosphere would be a little different than usual, expected more students. And it was a little bit of deja vu. The last time this happened was against NC State in 2017, a game where UNC ended up winning by 51 points. And while it didn't quite get to that margin of victory for UNC, there was a chance when it was looking like it was a possibility. UNC is 6-6 early on, but then 4 minutes in the game, UNC put their foot on the gas and kept their foot on the gas. Got out to a 22-4 run that turned into a 31-9 run. And you can look at a laundry list of stats during that time where UNC just out-hustled, outplayed, and just dominated NC State. They were 12 for 18 from the floor in that stretch, including 4 for 6 from 3, 12 second chance points, out-rebounded them 10-5, and even 6 players scored during that stretch. And it was just, I would say, what you've been wanting to see from UNC a lot this season, and they showed it during that stretch in the first half, AJ.
3 of the assists during that run by Ian Jackson. He doesn't have a lot of them this year, but he's had more lately. Jalen Withers and Jalen Washington. They were connected. The mission, Seth Trimble said, and Ian too, but Seth more emphatic about it because part of it was State in the building. I'll get to that in a second. But the mission was to put foot on throat early and put them away. And even though State toyed around and actually outscored Carolina in the second half and shot over 50%, which can be an issue at times for this team, it didn't hurt them because they had such a big lead. They led by 17 seconds into the second half, by the way, when Van Allen Lubin went on one of his little personal runs. The lead was 28 at halftime, and it was all inspired and triggered by that stretch. And they did everything in that stretch, as you just noted with the numbers. They had 3 turnovers they forced in the full court press after made baskets that led to buckets. Now, one of them was a putback by Trimble. One of them was after the ball went out of bounds. They kept the possession, and it counts as points off turnover. So they did so much so well early. They were thoroughly dominant. State looked indifferent. Mm-hmm. If you're a State fan, I know nobody here is watching or listening probably is, but State fans would have had every right to be really ticked off because that team didn't look like it was ready to play or wanted to play. We've seen the Tar Heels look like that at times this year. We saw them look like that last week at Clemson. That wasn't the case tonight. Credit Carolina for taking advantage. Credit them. It was almost one of those deals where, you're a hungry lion and you see a pack of zebras and they're running off and the one in the back is wounded and limping. Well, that was State, and Carolina raced in and pulled that wounded zebra to the ground and had a full meal. And that's the way the game was. Hitting from 3, hitting in transition, scoring off turnovers, getting points in the paint, the bench scoring. Every aspect of the game was involved in that run and in the first half. And Hubert Davis said after the game he thought it was the best basketball they played all year. I agree, but I will throw a caveat in there, or just a warning. State's terrible. State's 0-11 on the road now. State's lost 11 at 12. They're a terrible team that doesn't look like it has the right spirit right now. But at the same time, you've got to give the Tar Heels credit. When they beat Syracuse, people say, oh, Syracuse stinks, and it took 19 points by Jalen Withers. I get that. When they barely beat BC and barely beat Pitt, we were critical too. We're saying, look, they didn't play that well. They should have lost to BC. You could argue they should have lost to Pitt. So we've been there. But you also have to give a team credit when they win games. And what they've done in the last 2 games, they've won differently. And we're going to get on this here in a minute. But it's not just playing big. The use of the full court pressure has been a thing that Hubert has done after made free throws at times. Today he was doing it in that stretch after everything. And it totally flustered the pack. In fact, Seth Trimble told me, he said, State didn't want anything to do with our press. He didn't want anything to do with it. And they looked at Ian said you could sense from the Wolfpack early on that they were just rolling over and dying. Mm-hmm. And Carolina went in for the kill. So you have to credit the team for taking advantage of that. And they did 22-4. That stretch was unreal. This only lasted 8 minutes and 4 seconds. They scored 31 points in 8 minutes. They haven't been like that very often this year, certainly not in a while. They were against Cal. They were against SMU. And the difference with SMU, they kind of let up. They did let up a little bit tonight, but they still finished the thing off, won by 24, which is a margin they needed because the net isn't going to give them anything for beating State. But if they win by a big number, the net can help them. And they're still looking at the net. They're still in the conversation. They're not fully out of it yet. And if this team plays with the skip and bounce and the aggressiveness and the focus and connectivity that it did during that run, if they're able to bottle that and take that to the game Saturday against UVA and moving forward, that's going to help them, because we've talked a lot about one of the things missing from this club all year is the 14-2 run, is the 17-5 run. They'll have 10-4, maybe they'll go 8-0, but they can't push it out longer. And you win games if you can get a couple of those runs. They had one in the second half. It was shorter, it was smaller, and they had that one in the first half that was decisive. So being able to generate runs that can change games is going to be a key for this team moving forward. We saw them do it tonight. They had a couple of decent stretches against Syracuse, but not like what we saw tonight. And again, it was NC State. Virginia's a much better team, although they're not that great. But Carolina's good. To me, I want to see if they can do that Saturday against the Wahoos, and then Monday in Tallahassee and moving forward, because this could be a changed, tweaked, pivoted, and altered, if I'm going to use Hubert's words, addition to this club, a change in this club moving forward that maybe they weren't using much before, that becomes a little bit more who they are moving forward. I think it would help them.
Absolutely. And you mentioned UNC going in for the kill and Ian Jackson saying they're basically ready to roll over. And you also referenced the SMU and the Cal games. We've seen them somewhat go on those runs, but they have had chance after chance, whether it's Pittsburgh at home, even the Stanford game they ended up losing, where they started to go on that run and they just couldn't stretch it out. Whether it's to put up double digits or just to really just keep their foot on the gas. It's been a problem at times. But I think part of that, and you mentioned this to me before we came on here, was the bigger lineup UNC had. Yeah. Jalen Withers has started the last 2 games. Drake Powell started in place of Seth Trimble. I think that big lineup has really helped UNC. And Withers in the last 2 games has made a big difference. That UNC just hasn't really gotten from much of the season, but I think his presence in the bigger lineup has been a key factor for UNC in the last 2 games.
Well, it makes them a more normal team. And for a while, and I asked Seth about it, he said, look, the small guard lineup worked a little bit. I think it was sort of a Band-Aid in a period of time, but it wasn't sustainable, and it was at some point going to run out. And it did run out. And Hubert has had to go back to starting a guy that played, I'm going to tell you again, he had a 6-game span there in January heading into February. He played 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and 6 minutes, and he had a couple 11 and 12s or something in there. That's Jalen Withers. And credit Jalen as a 6-year player who probably has one eye on his future, credit him, or could have one eye on his future. I shouldn't say probably. That's not fair. Could have one eye on on his future, and he stayed focused and dialed into the team. And I think that shift is something that can trickle down and affect other guys. Just like when you don't have a leader talking out there, and maybe your best players aren't diving for loose balls, the other guys might not dive for loose balls. So we've seen a little bit more of that Withers stuff that he brings to the court, which is lots of wiry arms, lots of bounce, and some aggressiveness, and clearly some show and a lot of yapping. He yaps like crazy on the court. That's part of his game, and I think it's helped them the last two games because I think the other guys have had some of that in their bag as well. So going big means having an older guy who has a lot of care right now. He's playing with a lot of care. And I think the rest of the team has had a lot of care the last two games as well. Certainly a lot more than they had last week at Clemson. And you also, with Drake Powell at the 3, you can guard a lot of stuff now. And as Hubert noted, they were hitting the offensive glass. Carolina had 17 second chance points about 12 minutes into the game. Do you realize that's the most second chance points they've had in a game since the Dayton game in November? And they did it in the first 12 to 14 minutes of the game. They were hitting the offensive boards. They were getting stuff from the 3 spot, and they were getting putbacks. And what I thought was interesting, there were multiple times where they got offensive rebounds. They just didn't look to try to score and get the stuff swatted like we've seen. They're finding people, and they made some of the extra passes, and they moved, and they forced State's defense to move after getting an offensive rebound. I thought that there was a lot of dial in there. There was a lot of awareness there. And that is the kind of stuff that makes you a better team. You can be talented, and this is a talented team, but if you don't utilize your talent properly and you don't play the game properly for an extended period of time, you're not going to win. We've seen that this year. What we saw tonight was them doing a lot of things that coaches will sit back and say, now that club's doing stuff they're supposed to be doing. And you saw it in that run, and you saw them utilizing the bigs. I thought they were a little bit better defensively in the paint, other than a couple of guys getting blown by. I thought that they challenged stuff. Offensively, you got stuff from Lubin. He had a nice little run there for a while. You've got some nice buckets from Jay Wash. And the Withers being able to hit threes and shoot threes over people and shoot contested threes. He should have drawn a foul on one of them. And with the needle in the arm, and just bringing that little bit of
an extra,
that little extra layer of screw you, that, or just a layer of screw you, since they don't have much of that. He's got a little of that in his game right now. You know what? He's got nothing to lose, man. He's got a few weeks left a month left in his career, college career. And season hasn't gone the way he's wanted. He talked about that the other night in Syracuse. But
he has a chance to have it end the way he wants it to.
The last two games, he's helped them win. He's helped them set a tone in the last two games, and that's important. And he's a 6'9" guy who could guard the 5 at times. They have to do this again because Virginia's got a lot of length. They got a lot more length than NC State does. But look, if you're looking for a team to shift course, you've seen stuff in the last two games that are signs that they could potentially be shifting course. They certainly are in the approach. More pressing, I think that plays into their favor against most opponents.
Absolutely.
And playing bigger. And Seth's like, I asked him, I said, Hubert's been changing the starting lineup a lot lately. Now you're out of starting line. It's like, look, my role is still the same whether I start or not. Ian Jackson, we thought Ian would struggle the most with coming off the bench. Ian's fine with it. He said, look, I'm going to go out there and do what I'm supposed to do. And when it's my turn to go in the game, it's my turn to go in the game. And he still plays light. He still gets his shots, especially when they play big. He said the other day, I get different shot opportunities when we're playing small as opposed to when we're playing big. And they're not great ones. And RJ said in Syracuse, I think we're better playing big. We saw that. Hubert has made a commitment, in my opinion, to playing big because you didn't have to start big against Stakes. They're not that big. But he did. So I think this is the club moving forward. And there are some pretty decent little signs, but they have to do it against better teams. And they're going to play two teams coming up, especially FSU, two teams that are very long, got plenty of length, and will challenge them and have some big guys. So we'll see if it works. But I think this is what Hubert wants moving forward, and it worked tonight.
And you referenced, RJ saying they play their best when they play big, and just playing big in general. And we talk about Ian Jackson potentially struggling with maybe coming off the bench. But I think the most important thing, just from my perspective, I've noticed in these last 2 games, is with that comes you have a choice. Do you kind of accept what your role may be, or do you kind of go against it? And I think even though Ian's role maybe didn't change scoring wise or Seth's, the role they play with bigs on the floor is a little different. And I think the guys buying in, whether it's those two or Jalen Withers, makes a big difference in how the puzzle pieces fit together for UNC when they're playing big. And it seems like none of those guys were trying to do too much or do try to do too much when they're on the floor. And it felt like, especially Withers, aside from the shot at the end of the shot clock in the first half, all the stuff just came very naturally. He's not trying to play one-on-one basketball. He's getting stuff in transition or wide open in the offense, and it's just coming naturally. And these guys seem to be a little bit buying into their role and kind of their piece of the puzzle when it comes to
one other thing I want to add to this as well before we go on to the final thing here is that they're bringing 6'3", who's their leading rebounder, 6'4", who can get stuff off at the rim no matter how he's being defended, and they're bringing 6'10" with a 7'3" wingspan off the bench, an experienced player who's been around. So a lot of teams in the country would love to bring Seth Trimble, Ian Jackson, and Jalen Washington off the bench. If this is what it is moving forward, and all three of them have clearly accepted that if that's what they are the rest of the way, they're embracing it. And we've seen a scattered bunch. The Tar Heel basketball team, the Carolina this year has been like a puzzle that falls on the floor, and you got to figure out where all the pieces are. Well, maybe we're seeing what they're going to try to make it the rest of the way, because they're still a very flawed team in a lot of ways, but they appear less flawed right now than they did last week. And I know they played bad teams. I'm going to disregard that because I'm looking at their approach and how they're handling the approach. So they hit a fork in the road last week, man, after Clemson. And Van Allen Lubin said he's like, I asked him, I said, you guys bottom out? He's, I hope so. I think so. I mean, that was bad. They knew that was bad. That was a fork in the road. They had a choice. And 1 week later now, it appears the choice they've made is some changes are going to happen. Everyone's going to embrace it. We're all going to get connected, and we're going to push forward and see what we can do. And that's pretty much all any Carolina fan can ask at this point. We'll see if it works moving forward, but it worked enough Saturday, and it worked big time tonight.
Yep, and as we always do, we'll kind of jump into what this means because, like you said, they had a choice out of a fork in the road, and they made that choice. And it could really impact what this means moving forward for this UNC team.
Yeah, I guess I'm piggybacking on what I just said. They seem different. Remember I told you privately about the vibe I got outside the locker room at Clemson? Remember when we talked about that? I'm not going to say everything here, but, man, I thought that team was done. The vibe I got was they were done.
That would have been a very reasonable response just 9 days ago?
Human nature. Sometimes human nature is so strong-willed and can have a collective spirit with others that, hey, man, this ship is tilting and we all got to run to the other side to balance it out. And we need every one of you over there to balance it out. Otherwise, we're going down. And it's almost as – and I'm just the vibe I'm getting. I'm not trying to build them up over a win over NC State or anything like that. I'm just talking about the vibe I get being as close to them as I am, is that they did that. They ran to the other side of the ship. Now, there's part of that where it may kind of rock a little bit on that side. We'll see what happens. Maybe Virginia rocks it. Maybe it's still not fully settled, but it might be settling. And if Hubert is going to have them pin their ears back and say, okay, this is my lineup moving forward. These are my guys off the bench. We're going to press more because it's part of who we are. We're supposed to be fast. Well, pressing is fast. It speeds the game up, speed up opponents that maybe might not want to get into a high possession game against you. Those kinds of things make sense. And you're doing it. They can press with a big lineup. They could all move. Lubin can move. If you go back and watch him at Vanderbilt last year, he can get them down the court. Washington, Jay Wash has got great athletic ability. Withers has got amazing athletic ability. So you can do it. Mm-hmm. So I think what this means is perhaps, I don't want to say they're reinventing themselves, but I think Hubert may have looked back and said, okay, here's all these things we've done this year. Man, it's a lot of ugly crap. But there are some moments of good crap. And let's surface those and see what we can come up with. I ran a piece Wednesday morning about when Jalen Withers plays 14 or more minutes as opposed to when he doesn't. They're a better team when he plays 14 or more minutes. They've proven that. They've been competitive with some really good teams when he's playing 14 or more minutes. A couple of times they haven't been competitive against really good teams when he hasn't played that. I think he's not a world beater. He's not a guy that's going to go for 15 or 20 on a given night, but he is a guy that I think, as I said earlier, can set the tone. I think that's kind of where they are right now. What this means is they have tried to change their tone. And they've tried to do it collectively, and having a guy go in and play those minutes, man, he didn't play in the second half of 4 out of 6 games leading up to Clemson.
He'd play a little early spurt in the middle of the first half or midway through the first half, and that was it.
He played 6 minutes against Pitt last Saturday. And all of a sudden, we're talking about him as being a tone setter. That's how wacky the season's been. Perhaps it signals some mistakes maybe Hubert has made in recognizing things during the year, or maybe those things weren't there to recognize yet. Maybe he threw Jay Wood out there. He started him against Clemson. He's like, I got to do something. Clemson's big. I got to put him out there against Sheffield. That's what he said that night. And then, let's go ahead and roll him at Syracuse because of Davis. And he put him out there tonight when they didn't need to be big at the 4, given how they had approached other games. I think Hubert's like, okay, maybe this will work. And they've seen some positive stuff. So I suspect that we'll see the same starting 5 from tonight against UVA. And that will probably be the starting 5 moving forward. Because I'm going to reiterate one more time. One of the most positive things that I took out of talking to the players tonight is that Seth and Ian both have fully embraced the idea of coming off the bench. They're not worried about it. Their role is the same. And I think that is huge moving forward because there's no confusion. The messaging that Hubert's going to have with these guys, there's no confusion now. They all know. And if there is ever a point in the season where you need to get on the same page, it's now. And I feel like there's a little more of that. I think there's a little more of that now, at least that it's coming that way than there has been at any time this season. We'll see if it works. I mean, they just may not be very good, Bryant. They may lose to UVA and lose at Florida State, and I'll be talking about how, boy, this team just doesn't have much and all that. But we can't look into the future. We can only talk about right now. And I think there are some positives for Carolina fans to embrace. And by the way, the crowd here was fantastic. They had about 15,000 with this weather. Someone tweeted at us that said they should do one game a year like this when it's not bad weather. It'd be a lot of fun. But I think the kids enjoyed it too. I think they got some fuel from so many students being here. And the idea about building an arena off campus, man, if you had a game like this in an arena off campus, you would have had 1,000 people in here.
Yep.
I think they got to figure it out with this building and figure out those lifetime ticket holders and work something out. They got to work something out because I don't think that they need to do that. They don't need to spend that kind of money. But that's just my opinion off my soapbox, and we'll do a pod on that separate topic another time.
Yep, and like you said, we can only talk about what's now UNC, a game against UVA on Saturday, and then they'll go to Florida State, which in the past has given them trouble. But for now, we can only focus on what happened tonight. That was a really good win for UNC. Aside from that 6-6 start, they controlled from start to finish. So we'll look to see if they can do that again on Saturday against UVA before heading down to Tallahassee. Before we go, do not forget, if you like this content, like our video, subscribe, and give yourself a chance to be one of a handful of members to get 2 free years at TargetIllustrated.com. Get access to premium content that you can only get at TargetIllustrated.com. And before we go, AJ, just want to wish you a safe drive home. I know it's some rough weather, so best of luck. And
it is 10:46, so actually I got a lot of writing. The great thing about blowouts is I get writing done during the game, as you know. You know, sometimes in the last 8 minutes, I'm banging away, like whatever happens. Walk-ons are on the court. Oh, okay. So hopefully I'll be out of here. My goal is to be out of here by about 1. I should be out of here by 1. So, and I've got a sidebar assignment for you, by the way. And you didn't make it here, by the way. Let me just say, you're normally here. You have a season credential. But I told you to stay home, not to deal with the roads. I told Chelsea to stay home. Darren made it. Our photographer, our young photographer, Darren made it. So kudos to him. His grandfather drove. His grandfather's a State fan, I think. So. But that's cool. So he made. So we have great photos, and but I'll have a sidebar assignment for you. I'll text you in a little bit.
Sounds good. Well,
you're seeing THI do business behind the scenes right now,
and you don't have to pay for it either. I will be here on Saturday, and again, do not forget to subscribe. Become one of a handful of members to win 2 free years at THI. And we have comments now, so we want to hear from you.
Yes,
comment. Let us know what you think. But until next time, I'm Bryant, and he's AJ.
Thanks.